We've all heard that, but what does it mean? And how does it affect your day-to-day life or even your life overall? All souls are part of the greater source, or what some people call God. That is, we make up the totality that is source. We start as naive sparks who then set out to experience all that is in order for source to know itself in all ways. That is, for source to know, understand, feel, to realize the totality of all that is, because that is what source is, all that is. For those of us on earth, which obviously includes you who are watching this video, the part of the soul's journey that we are most immediately concerned with is reincarnation. Reincarnation is the part of source knowing all that is that gets fulfilled by undertaking earthly lives. Hi, my name is Hayley Jones, and I have been interested in the afterlife, reincarnation, and a whole lot more since I was a child. My passion is to help others really understand that death is not the end, and neither is it a tragedy ever, or something to be afraid of. It's part of a bigger story of our existence, as evidenced by stories of countless people who have had near-death experiences, shared death experiences, spontaneous recollection of past lives, and encounters with those in spirit form. Yes, I mean ghosts. So why is reincarnation necessary? Why do we need to come into human bodies at all? Why can't we just learn it all in spirit form? I think the answer can be found in a really simple analogy. If you wanted to learn to play the piano, for instance, you might approach it by looking at a picture of a piano keyboard and learning which key corresponds to which note. And you could look at a piece of piano music. Let's assume you can already read music. You could perhaps even learn which notes each finger should play in this piece of music. You could watch someone else play the piano, noting where they placed their fingers, how fast they played, and what expression they put into the piece. All of these things would give you at least an inkling of how to play the piano. But until you actually touch the piano keyboard yourself and press your fingers on the keys while following the piece of music and practice many times, you won't really be adept at playing the piano. Similarly, if you haven't experienced the fear and stress of not having enough money to cover your basic needs, possibly being in danger of losing your house, you can sympathize with someone going through it, but you cannot truly understand all of the complexities of how that feels. And of course, there are the old tropes. You can't know what light is without experiencing dark, and you can't know what happiness is without sadness. It is the same with the evolution of your soul. You could sit through lessons in the spirit plane learning about different circumstances and situations, but it would be nowhere near as effective as actually experiencing these circumstances and situations as a physical being. You may have a surface understanding, but it would be very difficult to fully embody them. Now, to make the learning even more effective, to enable us to fully embody the required learnings, we come into our earthly lives not remembering anything from before we were born. We have to deal with life as it comes, take it at face value that what is happening is real. However, the more lives we've lived, the more innate abilities and wisdom we have to draw on. That is, the more experienced we are, the more our character is developed, the more we are able to not take things so personally and to respond with patience and love. Having said that, I think this is a bit of a fuzzy relationship though. That is, I don't believe it's always or even often the case that you can look at someone's actions or responses and be able to accurately determine their level of soul development. Not that we should be doing this anyway. We're all at our core pure love. We're all equal. No soul is better than any other. And judging others' soul development levels is not a good use of our time here. On that note, and as an aside, I don't find the term old soul useful either. To be honest, I'm not sure if I've ever heard it used in a way that isn't a little bit pretentious. I think what people mean when they use the term old soul is experienced soul or soul that has lived many lives, but they also use it to imply someone who is an old soul is better than others, and this just isn't the case. They're just at a different stage of development or experience. And I'm really not sure that as humans, we're in a position to determine how experienced a particular person's soul is. There is so much that we don't and can't know. I would also say that just because someone is interested in spiritual things doesn't mean that they are necessarily an advanced soul. And on the flip side of that, just because they're not interested in spiritual things doesn't mean that they're not an advanced soul. We come into specific life circumstances for many, many reasons, fitting into a bigger picture that we can't hope to fully understand with our human brains. The best way to think of it, I think, is that we're all in this together, and helping each other as much as we can from a place of love is the best way forward for all of us. And when I say that about you can't tell, what level somebody is or how experienced they are, and we can't possibly know, of course I mean myself as well. I can't know everything. And so what I try to give in these videos is an overview of how I think it works in a way that the human brain can understand. I'm sure there are many, many nuances and complexities and things that I just can't possibly know. But I do believe that the basis of what happens to us and why we are here is what I talk about in my videos. Another concept I want to talk about that is often misunderstood and misused, I believe, is karma. So the popular understanding of karma is that it acts as a punishment for dirty deeds done in a previous lifetime, or when it's acting particularly quickly, dirty deeds done in your current lifetime. However, I think there is a better way and a more appropriate way to think about karma. Karma is not punishment. It is simply the term for knowledge and understanding yet to be fully integrated. That is, you're going through things, you're having experiences because your soul hasn't quite worked them out yet from an overall point of view. So you just have to go through them again. It's not a punishment. It's just what you need to know, and it's what you need to understand. So lots of people who relate near-death experiences mention undergoing some kind of life review. They also commonly say that the review is not about feeling guilty or bad. They're shown different incidents and are able to experience not only what they thought and felt during the incident or the interaction, but also what the other person thought and felt, as well as what ongoing effect that incident had on the other person, whether that was positive or negative or something in between. Often they will say that it wasn't necessarily the things that they thought were big or important in their life that had the most significant impact. So a typical example is noticing that the person in front of you at the supermarket checkout can't afford all of their groceries, and then deciding to pay for them, or at least pay the difference between the cost and what they could afford. In the life review then, they're shown that this simple act of kindness towards the person buoyed that person so much that they were able to shift their life path and go on to help others. So, a seemingly innocuous bit of kindness can actually shift somebody else's entire life path, just how they feel about themselves, because somebody showed them that they mattered. So the life review is undertaken completely without judgment. Its purpose is to help you understand which lessons of all that is you have fully integrated and which ones you need to do more work on. And that is what life on earth is in a nutshell. It's integrating the lessons of all that is, source, everything, to the point where you no longer need to incarnate. Now, on that note, I've had many people, friends and clients, say to me that they really hope that this is their last life on earth because it's all too hard. And I must admit, I've absolutely been through that for a very, very long time. Life can be hard. It can be really challenging emotionally, particularly. But over time, I've accepted, and as I've accepted the bigger picture, that it's a journey and it's about integrating all of the lessons of all that is, I've realized that my attitude towards what happens can make a big difference to how I feel about things that happen in my life and how I feel about my life in general. So having that understanding means that I've got a much more positive view of my life and the things that are happening or the things that have happened, and it's not such a burden Partly also because I realize there's no choice. If I accept that reincarnation happens, that I do have to keep coming back until I've learned all the lessons, and goodness knows I've got plenty more to learn. It's much better for me to accept that okay, I'm going to be back again, and that's okay. How can I enjoy the ride better? Okay, how can it be happier? How can it be more joyful? How can I bring more love into my life? It's a much, much better way to look at the world. And I'm not saying that I achieve that all the time. By no means do I achieve that all the time. But if I can keep coming back to that, it makes life in general so much better. So in summary, of course, there are certain things that happen that are difficult to cope with regardless of your attitude, like the loss of a loved one. However, a different perspective on death and dying can at least soften the blow. I think we do ourselves a disservice by not recognizing that any life is useful, no matter how long or short. It can be easier to cope with if we can see it as part of the overall soul experience for both the person that has passed and those seemingly left behind. And we know they haven't really been left behind at all. It's a continuum. They're just in a different phase. So I like to think of the journey as an eternal spiral. So what I mean by that is that across our many lives, we repeat the same lessons over and over to make sure that they're fully integrated. We have several goes at them to enable us to get to the point where we respond rather than react, and that response comes fully from a place of love and universal understanding rather than from fear and ego. As we go through different lives, we are also presented with increasingly difficult and complex versions of each lesson, hence the spiral. So we integrate the lesson at one level, it comes back around at a higher level of complexity for deeper and richer integration. We cycle through all of the lessons, increasing our experience in integration, at the same time moving upwards to cycle through them all again and again at higher levels. That is a spiral. So what this should all illustrate is that you are not a victim of your life or anything that happens in it. Unfortunately, I think our culture very much perpetuates a victim mentality, people wanting to point the blame for their perceived woes at someone else or something outside of themselves. The thing is, for you to integrate all of the lessons of all that is, you have to have experiences that enable you to do that. So that includes lessons with happiness and sadness, light and dark. Sometimes people choose particularly difficult lives, perhaps to get through a lot of integration at once. It still doesn't make them a victim. I believe that our lives are made up of a combination of 1, lessons that we want to integrate, and 2, planned interactions with specific souls. However, I also believe that we do have free will, so our lives don't always stick to the original plan. For example, you may have had an agreement with another soul that they would help you through a difficult financial time by allowing you to live in their home for a time. So you both would have had benefits from this. The benefit for you would be accepting somebody else's help and having that experience. The lesson for them or benefit for them would have the experience of helping someone else and putting themselves out. It might be inconvenient, but have the experience of helping out somebody else. But because we all have free will, it may be that their life is a little bit more difficult at this time than they had expected. For example, when you come to the point in your life that you need the help, you're not well financially and you need to stay with them for a while, you need somewhere to live, they may be in a much more difficult marital situation, for example, where they don't have the headspace or just the ability to have you live with them. So they have to break that soul contract, you might want to call it. So they don't offer for you to stay with them. So this obviously is all happening at the subconscious level. Neither of you has remembered this soul contract, but it is there. Okay, so what does that mean for both of you? Well, for them, it means because they wanted to experience helping someone when it was inconvenient for them, but they've reneged on it, they will have to go through that at a different time, either in this life or a different life, and maybe with you or with someone else. You know, it's not clear, but they will still need to go through that lesson at some time. And while it would be easy to judge that person for letting you down, as I keep saying, you know, the judgment is just not a helpful thing at all in any of our lives. I think I'm a very, very strong believer in the idea that everybody is doing their best in the moment. It might not be their best overall. You know, in a different time of their life, they might have made a different decision or behaved in a different way. But in the moment, I truly believe we all behave or do our best. I truly believe that. So that person will need to go through that experience at a different time. For you, okay, you're going to have a different experience. It might be harder. You might not be able to find another friend to step in and let you live with them. You might have to just couch surf for a while. There might be all kinds of scenarios for you. But whatever happens to you, it's still fine, even though it wasn't exactly the original lesson that you had hoped to learn or experience you'd hoped to have necessarily. It's still an experience. So you're still getting the benefit the benefit of that for your soul as a whole. It's still a lesson that you need to learn at some point. It might be a more complex version of the lesson from what you'd originally intended, but it still adds to your overall integration of all that is. So this is what is meant when people say that no matter what is happening, it's okay, perfect even. No matter how terrible it seems to us as humans, we've made a lot of judgments on things that perhaps we wouldn't make if we saw the bigger picture. So as I said, the point of all life on earth is, or the point of our lives on earth is to experience and integrate all that is. And even though it seems like a long time as we're going through it, it really is just the blink of an eye compared to eternity. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. My name is Hayley Jones. If you've enjoyed this video, you might want to check out some of my other videos and maybe like this one and even subscribe to my channel. See you next time.